Suicide Squad. When the film came out in 2016, it was relatively successful at the box office, but was also relatively critically panned by critics and viewers alike. Even a cursory view over the general audience responses given to the film gives an impression that what people love most about the film is hating it together. And while it may be hard to argue that David Ayer is the greatest director of our time, it is also hard to argue that he is anything other than one of our time's best film writers. It is hard to believe that the writer of Training Day could ever be fairly nominated for a Razzie in the screenwriting category for any of his films. Nonetheless, in the research I did for this episode, I indeed found no one who praised David Ayer's writing. As with the film's Razzie nomination, it was frequently a focus of criticism. And yet, in spite of the numerous examples of screenplay criticism, I have been unsuccessful in finding a single instance of a critic who is able to pair their criticism with an accurate interpretation of the film's meaning. I want to rectify that critical transgression by explaining the message of Suicide Squad in today's episode of Cin Pol. 3 steps need to be taken to properly perceive the message of this film. First, we need to understand the film's symbolism. Second, we need to understand its main characters. And then finally, third, we can interpret the film's meaning. So first, the film's symbolism. The most important symbolism of the film is seen in its use of that which is natural and that which is compulsive to human identity. The film symbolically uses one thing that is natural to men's personal identification, one thing that is natural to women's personal identification, and finally, that which is compulsive for them both. That which is shown to be natural for men's identities is their work, and this is a generally accurate attribution. Men tend to naturally identify themselves by the work that they do. Industry, noting this, has seized upon the opportunity for easy commercialism by catering to men's desire to be known for their work. When you see an advertisement directed at men, more often than not, the advertisement is promoting something which is intended to exhibit the costliness of the item in question. Whether it be a watch, an expensive suit, or a fancy car, men tend to want to be known for and identified by what they are able to afford. Attention is directed by the things they buy toward creating a positive impression of the rank of the jobs men hold, which are able to afford them such lavish items. Thus, men tend to naturally identify themselves by what they do through their work. If you haven't observed this, just note what the first question is a man will ask you after he meets you. 9 times out of 10, the question is, what do you do? Women, on the other hand, naturally identify by something else. Women tend to naturally identify themselves by who they are, rather than by what they do. This most often plays out by women tying much of their identity to their bodies. Again, this is seen consistently in the items industry advertises to women. Because industry knows that women want to be known for their bodies, women are sold clothing which consistently reveals more skin and form than clothing marketed to men. The makeup industry is solely focused on helping women turn their faces into an exhibition. Thus, women tend to naturally identify themselves by who they are through their bodies. If you have ever failed to notice this, just listen for 5 minutes to what women talk about to each other in the break room at their work. 9 times out of 10, it will be about their health, their weight, their period, or something of the like. Both of these things, what one does and who one is, are intrinsic to human existence because, to varying extents, they are controlled by each person depending on what he or she puts into him or herself. So, work and body are 2 things by which men and women, respectively, naturally gravitate toward identifying themselves. That which is considered compulsive to both men and women with regard to their identities is family. The family unit is not something which is naturally chosen or controlled by either men or women. Instead, family compulsively and totally identifies people once they are a part of it. Falling in love is often compulsive. Children cannot be engineered, and membership is non-negotiable. Family forms itself and shapes the people contained therein. Consequently, family is an external and compulsive force for change and identity. This symbolism becomes important as we try to understand the film's 2 main characters, Deadshot and Harley Quinn. While it may or may not be inherently a fault with the film, many critics are correct in pointing out that the vast majority of the members of the Suicide Squad are superfluous to the main plot. The only characters that really matter are Will Smith's and Margaret Robbie's characters. Their significance is seen in the way they each embody the preceding symbols and in their inverted parallelism to each other. First, Deadshot is shown in the film to have two characteristics. He is first known for what he has, and second, he is known for what he wants. What does he have? Family. The character Deadshot is defined by the compulsory or external element of his family. Look at how he dresses in the film. If he were defined by what he did for his work, we would expect him to be dressed tactically and in all black like a SWAT officer. He isn't. When in a civilian context, he dresses simply and with Christian paraphernalia. This demonstrates that he is identified by something more than that which he does. Rather, he is identified by the external influence of his family in Christ and his daughter. Even when he is working as a murderer, he does not dress as we would expect him to, but literally has emblazoned on his collar Scripture. It's even emblazoned on his gun. Deadshot has family and is defined by it. What he wants is a different story. He wants to be identified by his work. We see that this is the true desire of his heart because he is constantly wanting to return to it, but is continually kept from his work by his family. At the climax of the film, the Enchantress makes this point explicitly clear when we are given a glimpse into each character's heart of hearts. When we see Deadshot's heart, he is not thinking about his daughter or religion, he is thinking about murder. The other main character of the film, Harley Quinn, is the exact opposite of Deadshot. What she has is autonomous choice. Harley's identity is clearly shown to be found in who she is by the fact that her body is so prominent in virtually every shot in which she appears. And while it may seem like cheap cinematic eye candy, this is character development. In the same way that Deadshot is identified as a character by his costume, Harley is also by her lack thereof. She is dressed in such a way as to value and prioritize her own body, herself. What she wants, however, is the opposite. She wants nothing more than to be part of a family unit. Throughout the film, Harley is depicted as being on a journey to find her family. She wants to be controlled. She wants her autonomy and being to be replaced by something more than herself. This is why she is so eager to either be with the Joker or be a part of the Suicide Squad. When the Enchantress shows the audience Harley Quinn's heart of hearts, we see that her deepest desire is to have a normal family with a husband and children. Thus, we have two characters. Each has one thing, and each wants one thing. One has compulsion, but wants his nature. The other has her nature, but wants compulsion. Now that we understand the symbolism of the film and how it is manifested in its main characters, we can break down the way in which the film uses this structure to make its point. Ultimately, the message of the film is found by assessing which character comes out on top in the end. Does external compulsion trump human nature to save the day, or does human nature resist its victimizing environment to save itself? Throughout the movie, Deadshot is destructively involved in his work. Although he wants to work, he is wishing for his own destruction. He commits heinous murder and gets in trouble with the law. He is shown to be a terrible person. However, he is always protected by things outside of himself, namely his daughter. She is the one who stops him from murdering Batman and gets him sent to prison, which is really the protection from himself that he needs. When he gives up on saving Midway City and decides to abandon the Suicide Squad, it is the letters from his daughter that motivate him to return to do the right thing and create a story from the Bible. And while in the end of the film, Deadshot is left in prison, he is also left on good terms with his daughter and protected from the self-destroying choices he makes while he is free. His character finishes the film saved. Harley, on the other hand, has a very different and more complicated experience. Harley is almost always shown having a constructive role in the lives of others. She is the most righteous character in the film, and this for a reason. Careful viewing of the film will show that Harley never commits or even desires to commit any of the murderous atrocities played out by and desired by Deadshot. The script is written this way because the director wants to show that even though Harley is committing good works by her own autonomy, they are ultimately insufficient in saving her. She wants to do the right thing, and part of what she believes is right is finding a family unit into which she can infuse herself. Based on the result David Ayer gave Deadshot for having family, this is narratively a wise choice on Harley's part. However, although she wants nothing more than to be involved constructively in some form of a family unit, her reality is that she is constantly being hurt by her own choice in a family. This pain primarily takes the form of her abusive boyfriend, the Joker. Many people were confused by Ayer's decision to cut certain charismatic Joker scenes from the film's theatrical version. However, the problem with including scenes in which Harley provides the Joker with a machine gun for murder or directly murders a trucker is that such scenes depict her as a bad person. David Ayer was very intentional in his theatrical version to not portray Harley as engaging in any real moral compromises. He wanted her to be autonomously moral and righteously seeking the family she needed for salvation from herself, so that he could juxtapose her self-righteousness against her ultimate damnation. The key term here is self-righteous. David Ayer is a decidedly conservative writer. Conservative here meaning that he views human nature as inherently evil. His goal with the character of Harley was to show someone who, though recognizing her inherently evil nature and wanting an external force to save her from herself, ultimately, Ayer is stating that external salvation must be just that, external. She cannot force external salvation upon herself. In David Ayer's eyes, Harley's character personifies the best a human can possibly be, both in her personal actions and in her desire for there to be an external form of accountability over her life. And yet, at the same time, David Ayer depicts her as only being capable of choosing poorly for herself in the form of the Joker, because her character is autonomously defined. While she wants external family, all she has is her internal autonomy. The result of this autonomy is manifested in a man who abuses her and does not fulfill the righteous desire of her heart, because despite Harley's best intentions, he is the product of her corrupted human nature. Even in the end of the film, when Harley finally obtains the structure, family, and stability she craved, her previous autonomous choices come back to haunt her by setting her free for a life of abusive torment. Thus, Suicide Squad is decidedly pessimistic, even by conservative standards. While the external force of family is used as a symbol to argue for the saving power of external force, the idea that even a person who wishes for external salvation can still fail to obtain it if their personal power is all they are left to search with is depressing. But it's honestly not outside the usual David Ayer ground. Ultimately, Suicide Squad may or may not be a well-directed film. Even the script is in many ways up for debate in its subjective fulfillment of good film standards. But hopefully now, when we talk about the film, it will be from a more informed position. Hopefully, we have come to actually think critically, to think for ourselves.